Enter the long box of the damned 2018 bumper contest, if you dare. Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Back in 2014, I had the honor, I guess you could say, of reviewing a comic put out by fast food chain Chik-Fil-A about a cow superhero. There's not only more than one issue of such a thing, but in fact there's more than one cow hero. In issue number 5, we talked about Speed Steer, aka Gristle Missile. For some reason, they changed that name and they were wrong to do so. I have 2 copies of this comic, one the normal size of a comic and one a tinier version. There doesn't seem to be any real difference in the content of the book, just the smaller one has the Speed Steer name on the back instead of Gristle Missile, as if they were shrunken in embarrassment over changing the name. In Speed Steer, a calf comes across a meteorite that grants it super speed, allowing it to travel from Georgia all the way to New York City. And nobody being impressed by that.
You're not in Wisconsin, Dave. The big story isn't about a cow wandering into the town square.
After being chased by, like, half the population of Georgia, either for going faster than people racing or stealing people's food to ensure they eat chicken instead, he went after a fast food chain called Beefy Town Burger. And what dastardly thing was this fast food restaurant doing? Giving free food out to people! Those diseased maniacs! Also, this would somehow result in them taking over the town. So let's dig into Amazing Cow Heroes number 4, Cold Cuts, and see what nefarious scheme the villains are doing in this one.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. Brodsky, you're not the smartest. Life out, you're not an artist. Anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he's a man punch, wears a birdie hat. Linkara, he has a magic gun. Where'd he purchase that? Linkara, coins, robots, Amazon and trucks. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara. I'm called a cow. I'm not about to blow it now for all.
The cover's okay, featuring a shot of our heroes standing on a little hill of snow and surrounded by penguins. I'm just really hoping those penguins turn out to be like the Robins to this cow's Batman. The Icy Adventures of Cold Cuts. These comics are about how you should eat more chicken than beef, but this one is named deliberately after lunch meat? Will Cold Cuts put the freeze on eating beef? Or will she be left out on the counter to thaw for too long and then go bad? We open in the South Atlantic Ocean near Cape Horn, South America, where we can only hope that they run into that thing fish from the end of the Eternal Vows miniseries and kill it before it tries to fall in love with somebody. The weather started getting rough and the tiny ship was tossed, and I just noticed that the name of the ship is Sea Cow. So, like, manatees? Also, I'm pretty sure the captain of this ship is Carl Copenhagen from Demo Reel. Man, I always wondered what happened to him. Anyway, he tells the crew to batten down the hatches to keep their cargo, a load of cows, safe before they're brought to market. As the storm gets worse, a magnetic disturbance starts up and the entire ship is struck by lightning. The lightning blows a hole in the side of the ship.
Of course! Don't you know anything about science?
Yeah, from the brief research I did, while boats and ships made of metal can be damaged by lightning strikes, it shouldn't blow a hole in the side of it like this unless they were storing nitroglycerin in the hull. But yeah, a hole in the boat and the cows start moving away from the hole to avoid falling out, but one cow is less fortunate and drops down into the water. She struggles to stay afloat, thinking only of her own survival. She is left behind in the icy sea. Hey kids, enjoy this comic where you get to watch a cow drowning! But no, the cow does not drown. Instead, it freezes over. As time passes, her body temperature drops to levels well below normal. Yet, she survives. This is the weirdest origin for a slasher movie I've ever seen. The worst part is that the cow is conscious during this whole process. Just imagine what must be going through its head, this animal that doesn't fully comprehend the science of its freezing. The terror that must have shaken it, the cold and panic gripping it as it loses the ability to breathe and move and do anything else but see and think. What is it thinking about? Moo. Pure poetry, this comic. A whale pushes her towards shore, where a group of penguins spot it and approach this cow frozen in a block of ice. And thus, 80 years later, this cow was revived and became Captain Amurica. A penguin decides to free the frozen cow from the block of ice. It thinks the cow will be delicious. The penguins all peck at the ice, eventually freeing the cow, which apparently has a bright green glow once it's freed. Now it's radioactive! That can't be good! The penguins are kind and try to warm up the cow with their body heat, but it's soon clear that's not necessary. Something is different about this cow. It's actually a moose. No, the cow just exhales out of her nose and it creates some kind of freezing power that creates a snowman body around a penguin. Mysteriously, the cow has acquired the power of cryokinesis, the ability to freeze things with her breath. I mean, technically speaking, cryokinesis doesn't require it to be through her breath, but while that is impressive, it doesn't point out her other power: spontaneously generating top hats! I'd also question how it made a snowman body, and where the coal buttons came from, but that's just too adorable to take issue with. Then, as if the penguins have been waiting for this moment, they present the cow with a special Sub-Zero suit. Okay, that I'll question! Where the hell did they get that? And so, a new hero is born. Captain Cowled. Cold Cuts writes out thanks in the snow, and I'm not sure where the hell it learned English, or assumed that the penguins would speak it, but hey, at least it's grateful. She stays with the penguins for a bit to test her new powers, showing off her amazing ability to make ice sculptures with her freeze breath, like the ship she came from, and the rest of her herd who were taken. She also realizes she needs to help them, but then a leopard seal breaks through the ice to attack the penguins. All seems lost for the little birds. But our hero knows just what to do, and thus she opens negotiations with the leopard seal for a long-term trade alliance and mutual defense pact. Now, of course, she uses her freeze breath to either kill the seal or at least repel it. Even though the penguins have accepted the cow as family, she has a different destiny. This is a weird remake of Dances with Wolves. Cold Cuts sheds a single tear that turns to ice. Mr. Freeze did it better. Well, mind you, I assume that her tear froze over. It could be she literally cries ice and it's so painful that she's only able to get out a single tear. Anyway, she forms an ice bridge and gets on her way to find the boat, actually locating it rather quickly. Sure, the caption says many breaths later, but I've got to imagine that she hasn't stopped to eat or sleep or anything. But yeah, she quickly boards the boat. Captain, the temperature is dropping. That's strange. The weather report didn't mention a cold front. Although it did mention something about a superhero cow with fire powers, weirdly enough. And thus Cold Cuts confronts the two. Moo. I know it sounds like she just said moo, but here, let me translate.
Do you know the Klingon proverb that tells us revenge is a dish that is best served cold?
The captain thinks that a cow escaped, briefly wondering where it got the clothes from, but then she uses her powers on him. Can't move my arm. Oh god, it snapped off like liquid nitrogen was used on it. Ah! Two other crewmen decide to catch her with a net. We'll make Cold Cuts out of her! So Cold Cuts chose her superhero name based specifically on what the villains wanted to turn her into? And yet, I repeat, Gristle Missile was rejected! She freezes the net and shatters it, soon locking the three into an ice cage. What do you think you're doing? That's it, cow! You're grounded! Cold Cuts makes her way to the kitchen. Hey, how'd you get in here? Maybe we're having pot roast tonight, eh? And she freezes his hands. What's the big idea? Let me go! Jeez, all I said was that I'd kill you and cook you. What's the big idea? From there, she goes to the crew quarters to deal with the remaining opponents. It's a rogue cow in a blue suit, boys! Get her! In reality, that's the only thing that guy can say. It's just a coincidence that that's actually happening. Soon the rest of the poorly drawn crew are frozen to the wall. With the crew dealt with, Cold Cuts frees the rest of the herd. Back on the bridge, Cold Cuts is steering the ship? You know, I'm starting to think this comic is kind of silly. The captain grumbles over this situation. And Cold Cuts puts some ice over his mouth. Cold Cuts, you monster! His lips are gonna be so chapped! And so our comic ends with Cold Cuts directing the boat back to home, which I presume is where the herd originally came from. Although, considering she was so sad about leaving the penguins she befriended, maybe she's heading to Antarctica. She realizes the fullest extent of her destiny. To save all cows, she must convince people to eat more chicken. She made sure to add a registered trademark logo at the end of that sentence. She thinks there's real marketing potential there. This comic is absolutely goofy, but taken on its own, it's not terrible. No, seriously, unlike Speed Steer, where the cow is fighting off a plan to take over a town through its scheme of making burger joints, and I still don't get how that works, this story is a fairly straightforward superhero origin. If you replaced Cold Cuts with, say, a person who escaped human traffickers who came back to free the rest of her family and friends, it'd really be no different. The artwork is mostly serviceable, but kind of wonky on the people in various shots. I cut it some slack since it's not really supposed to be anything that impressive in that department, but it's still not that great. I will give it credit that the cows and penguins look fine, though. Next time, it's another follow-up to a theme month I'd done before, as we return to the year 2099.
Bill, you know, I worked in Milwaukee. You know, it's a city with a population of 1 million people.
So there must have been quite a hubbub when that cow got loose, huh?